Okay, good afternoon, everyone, once again, and would like to welcome you once again to the information session. I know I've said this before, but I can't stop welcoming you to this very, very important session that we have here today. A few weeks ago, we did have a session where someone from CELPIP came to address us and told us about the very good news that we now have CELPIP test in Nigeria, Lagos precisely. And we thought it was good for us to bring in someone to come and talk to us on how best to prepare for the CELPIP General Test. And today we have someone that will do justice to that. I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Wisdom Akpokiye. I'm the principal consultant at Dow Immigration Consulting Services Limited here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I am duly registered with the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, which would be IRCC, the regulatory body for immigration practice here in Canada. I am also a Canadian, I'm also a member of the Canadian Association of Professional Immigration Consultants, which would be CELPIP, and also a member of Immigration Education Alliance, IMED. I am a licensed foreign worker recruiter in the provinces of Nova Scotia, here where I live, and also in the province of Saskatchewan in Canada. And with me today is someone very, very, very special and important. I met him, I believe, as soon as I came to Canada. And when I immigrated, as a new immigrant, trying to, find out how to settle in and how to get on with life, I sourced for information and our path crossed. His name is Ian Shepherd. He's the owner of Right Start Newcomer Services in Halifax, Nova Scotia here. He's been teaching English as an educational language. Sorry, I'll say that again. He's been teaching English as an additional language for over 20 years. He has a Master's of Education degree from Mount St. Vincent University here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and he has completed the CELPIP Level 1 training. You would agree with me that Ian is the best person to tell you how to prepare for the CELPIP General Test. And that is why he's here today. Just to say a few ground rules here, would like to ask that you leave your mics muted throughout the session and also turn off your video so you don't interrupt. And Ian will be happy to take questions after his presentation, but we would ask that you put the questions on the chat box so that I would read them out to him to answer at the end of his presentation. So without further ado, I'm gonna make welcome Ian Shepherd. Ian, the floor is yours.
Buddy, thank you so much, Wisdom. That was a great introduction. I may not be as important as you make me out to be, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much for that. And welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in and taking time on this Saturday. Yeah, so Wisdom did a great job of introducing me and the topic. I just want to make it clear that no, I do not work for CELPIP, so I'm not trying to push anybody to take the test or to pay for any type of training or anything like that. So I'm just here for information. As Wisdom says, I've been teaching overseas and in Canada for a long time, and I have taken the CELPIP Level 1 teacher training. So I got some tips when I took that course, and I've helped students prepare for this exam over the last year or so. So I'm quite familiar with the test, but there may be some questions I'm not quite able to answer. So like Wisdom said, put the questions in the chat and I will do my best to answer those. Also, if I'm talking too quickly or you don't understand something I say, let me know, and then we'll deal with that situation if it comes up. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. As Wisdom said, I'm going to do a presentation. It'll be pretty quick. So I'm aiming for about 20 minutes. There's quite a lot of text. So I put the presentation in the chat. So it's there. It says CELPIP presentation. Feel free to download that, view it on your computer, and then you can revisit it afterwards. So I know a lot of you might not be in the situation where you're taking the test anytime soon. So maybe if you're taking it in 6 months, you may be able to look at this presentation at that time, and that would help you prepare for the test when you're ready to take it. All right, so I'm going to share my screen now. So, like Wisdom said, I'm the owner of Right Start Newcomer Services. So, we're a small business in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where Wisdom is based. And we provide language training. We provide tours of Halifax as well. So, if you are coming to Halifax, I'll invite you to take a city tour with us. And that's a free service that we offer to all newcomers to Canada. Yeah, so check out my website. If you have a question afterwards, I included my email address there in the presentation, so feel free to shoot me an email if you like. All right, the objective of today's presentation is to learn more about the format of the CELPIP test. So CELPIP is not as popular as a test like the IELTS exam. I know a lot of you are probably familiar with the IELTS. CELPIP is less well known. It's I think a newer test, and it's only really used in Canada. So the idea of today's lesson is to learn more about that test and maybe how it's different from IELTS. And if you choose to take the CELPIP, you'll be more prepared when you do take this exam. The next purpose of today's presentation is to get some tips. So I want to give you some ideas to be successful on your first attempt at the CELPIP test if you do take it. Finally, I'm going to show you some resources. Most of them are on the CELPIP, the official CELPIP website, but they have some really, really good free and paid resources that you can use there. All right. So this is just the outline. We sort of covered that already. So we'll have the overview, we'll have tips for each section. And then we'll have tips for preparing for the CELPIP in general. All right, so those of you who didn't attend the session a couple of weeks back with Wisdom, the CELPIP General Test evaluates test takers' English listening, reading, writing, and speaking skills, and is officially designated for permanent resident applications by IRCC, and it's also accepted for professional designations, as well as a few educational institutions in Canada. So mainly you're using it for your permanent residency application, but it can also be used for citizenship, for example. So after you stay in Canada for 3 years or longer, you can apply for citizenship, and this test can be used for that as well. All right, so there are 4 main parts of the CELPIP. It takes about 3 hours to complete it, and it's all done in person. And like Wisdom said, there is a testing center now in Lagos, so you can take it in Nigeria, which is pretty cool. It's all done at one time. Basically, the 4 parts are listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Most of the sections are about an hour, with the speaking part 15 to 20 minutes. So we're going to go through bit by bit. We'll start with the listening test. Basically, there are 6 parts to the listening section of the test. All of this is done on the computer. So you'll have a headset, you'll have a computer monitor showing you the questions. Sometimes there will be pictures accompanying the listening. So basically you're listening for everyday conversations, things like problem solving. So for example, somebody gets on the bus and they're talking to the bus driver. They don't know where to go. They ask the bus driver for help, and the bus driver tries to solve their problem. So that would be an example of a part 1 listening task that you would do on this test. Also, you're going to listen to daily life conversations, listening for information, listening to a news item, so something you might see on TV or hear on the radio, listening to a discussion, and then listening to someone's viewpoint or their opinion. Basically, the listening test gets more difficult as you go. So the first task should be pretty easy, but it's quickly going to get more and more difficult. They are testing for some particular skills. So they want to make sure that you can preview and predict what you're going to hear. You can identify main ideas and details. The next one might be a little bit tricky. You have to sort of infer, which is like guess or figure out what are their feelings and attitudes of the speakers that you're listening to. They're not officially testing you on note taking, but this is a really important skill for the listening exam. So you will get one single piece of paper and a pencil. You're expected to listen, take notes as you listen, and then the questions come after. So you have the listening, then the questions come up, and you use your notes to answer those questions. So really, they're testing you on your ability to take notes while listening. They're also testing your time management. So you have a fixed amount of time for each question. There's no way to go back and change an answer if you run out of time or miss something. Really, there's three types of questions for the listening part. There's general meaning questions, there's specific information questions, and then there's inference or figuring out what they mean. All right, so I have some tips and then we'll move on to the next section. So the first tip is to take notes. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to remember everything I hear. I never forget anything. But they talk pretty quickly and there's a lot of information and you don't know exactly what they're going to ask about. So take notes, keep your notes in order. So if you have more than one page on the go, make sure you number it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Like I said, they only give you one page at a time and you have to put your hand up and ask for another page. So make sure you do that while you still have room left on the current page, right? You don't want to be in a situation where you run out of paper, you put your hand up and then the invigilator doesn't have time to get you the paper right away. So take notes, use your notes to answer the questions. And that's a skill that you can practice. So before you take the exam, practice your note taking. So listen to a lecture, watch a YouTube video, things like that. Practice your note taking. Second tip is that sometimes the photos contain the answers. So don't just ignore the pictures that they show you because that can be very useful information for some of the questions. Always guess. So there is no punishment for guessing and getting the wrong answer. You only get a point, so there's 38 possible points on the listening part. If you don't know the answer, guess because you have a 1 in 4 chance of getting it correct. Eliminate incorrect answers. So sometimes it might be between two answers and you're not sure, but you can eliminate two other answers and then you have a better chance of guessing the right answer. And while you're listening, or even before you're listening, maybe you see a picture, try to guess or predict what you're going to listen to. So you can ask yourself questions. In English, as an English teacher, we call them the 5 W's, like who, what, when, where, why, and how. So ask yourself these questions, and as you're practicing to do well on this exam, ask yourself these questions to what you listen to. So who am I listening to? What is the problem? How do they know each other? Where are they? So practice asking yourself these questions, and then you'll have a better chance of doing well when you take the exam. So that's all I have about the listening test. Let's move on to the reading section of the test. It's a little bit shorter. There are 4 parts only on the reading test. So the first part is about reading correspondence. So this is usually like an email or a letter. Again, it will get more difficult as you go through the test. Second part is reading to apply a diagram. That's really poorly worded, but you're looking at a picture of something. So it could be how a machine works, it could be an advertisement, something like that, and you have to get information from that. Next one, you're reading information. So this could be like a news article or something like that, usually about 4 paragraphs. And then the last one, you're reading about an opinion. So you're reading for someone's viewpoints. This slide shows you kind of what it will look like when you do the reading section of the exam. So the screen, like I said, it's all done on the computer. The left side will have the reading, and the right side will have the questions. Meanwhile, at the top, it will show you how much time is left. And then when you're finished, you can click next, or it will advance automatically. I would suggest taking all the time that you have, right? Don't rush to finish and click next. Take the full 10 minutes and check your answers. So read it, check your answers. Don't just rush to finish this test because, like I said, you can't go back. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Skills, we're not going to spend much time on this, but pretty much the same as the listening. You're previewing and predicting, identifying main ideas and details. This one's pretty important, identifying tone and structure, parts of emails, etc. So you have to identify the tone that the writer is using. So is it informal or formal? That type of thing. What are their feelings? So you have to infer feelings and attitudes. Again, time management is a really important skill for this exam. Also, you have to, depending on your vocabulary, you might have to use context to figure out the meaning of words. So it does get hard, and there may be some words you don't know, but you can figure it out using the sentences and paragraphs around it. Finally, there's paraphrasing and hypothetical language. So definitely by the third or fourth activity, it gets tricky and you might have to figure out, what they're really talking about. The 3 types of questions, same as listening: general meaning, specific information, and inference. All right, so let's go through a few more tips for the reading test. The first tip is to preview the full screen. So I don't suggest reading the excerpt before you do the questions. So just look at it, make sure you can see the whole thing, make sure it's working properly, and then focus on the questions before you read the whole, the reading excerpt. Read the questions first. That way you're not wasting time. So a lot of people will waste a lot of time reading it all carefully, and then by the time they get to the questions, they only have 2 minutes left. So start with the questions and then try to find those in the reading section. Identify keywords. So for example, a name, a date, a place, things like that will help you find the answer to that question in the reading excerpt. So identify keywords in the questions, and then you want to search the text. You want to scan the text for relevant information to answer those questions. Again, you're looking for those keywords. Again, eliminate incorrect answers. So you may not know exactly the right answer, but it's not C or D. That way you can guess between A or B. And then choose the best option, of course. Okay, halfway there. The writing test. All right, so this might be one of the most difficult parts. I think, the writing and the speaking are probably the 2 trickiest parts that you have to prepare for. The writing, seems pretty easy. There's only 2 parts. The first part is writing an email. And, we write emails all the time, but they expect you to use proper email formatting. So you have to You don't have to include a subject line, but you have to say like, dear wisdom. Depending on our relationship, I might say, dear Mr. Akpokige. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. So you do have to address the person. You do have to use proper sentences and paragraph format. You have to sign off and say sincerely or yours truly, and then your name at the bottom. So it is important that you use correct email formatting for your writing test. The second one, you have to give an opinion. So you will have a question. Usually it's A or B. They're asking you which one you prefer and why. So for example, they're thinking about building a park or a shopping center in your neighborhood. And you have to argue which you prefer and give at least 2 or 3 reasons why you prefer that one. You can sort of format it as an email, but you don't need to. So in this one, you don't need to sign off. You don't have to say, dear Mr. Somebody, but you do have to fully address that question. You're marked on 4 things. So your content and its coherence. So what do you write? Do you address what's asked in the question? Did you give a good argument? That type of thing. You're marked on your vocabulary, your readability. So do you have correct punctuation, spelling, that type of thing? And then finally on task fulfillment. So did you address the main points of that task? These ones, the listening and the reading are marked by a computer. The writing and the speaking are marked by actual people. So for the first task, I already covered all of this, I think. But yeah, it is important that you write at least 1 sentence for each task. So what I would say is to read the question, write a couple notes to keep you on track, write out your email, and then go back and read the question again a second time. And make sure that you covered all of the points that they want you to address in the email. And I have an example on the next slide of what that email question would look like. The second one, the survey questions, you have to choose an option. This one, you really want to choose A or B. You don't want to say maybe A, maybe B, I don't know, who cares? You want to say definitely I choose A, and this is why, right? So don't be wishy-washy. You guys have that expression, wishy-washy? But you want to be very clear, I choose A, and this is the reason why. Or I choose B, and these are the reasons why. And you're trying to sort of persuade the reader a little bit, right? You want to say how you're feeling and give really good reasons and examples. And on this test, you can make stuff up, right? It doesn't have to be factual, right? You can say, I've got 3 children and we want a park in our neighborhood because we love to play baseball and blah, 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 even if you don't have any kids in real life. So use your imagination, but it must be realistic, right? Don't say I have 3 aliens from another planet, right? Because that's not realistic. But if you say I have 3 kids and we love to play sports, that's something that the marker can believe. All right, so this one's a little bit hard to read, but this is an example of an email that you might need to write. So I'll just read it out. The question says, read the following information. You recently made reservations for dinner at a very famous and expensive restaurant in town. However, the meal and the service were terrible. The restaurant manager was not available to solve the problem, so you left without a resolution, which would make anybody angry, right? Your task is to write an email to the restaurant's manager in about 150 to 200 words. So think about that. 200 words is not a lot, right? It's probably 2 or 3 paragraphs. And then it tells you what your email must include. your email should include the following things. State what problems you had with the food you ordered. Notice it says problems, so at least 2, 3 is probably better. Complain about the service, and then describe how you want the restaurant to resolve the problem to your satisfaction. So to get full marks, you need to address each of these tasks in your answer. And then you can see where the space is. Very nice, it counts words for you, right? So it'll tell you when you have 200 words, and they do care about word count, right? You don't want to say, I want to show off and I'm going to write 400 words, because you will be penalized if you write too much or too little. So use that word counter. That's my first tip, right? Don't write too much or too little. If they say 150 to 200 words, under 135 or over 220 words will be penalized. I would go towards the higher end, right? You don't want to stop when you get 150. I would aim for at least 180 to 200. More is better, but it all depends on your time and stuff. Proofread your answer. So everybody makes mistakes. It doesn't show you when you actually, it does show a line, right? So when you make a spelling mistake, it may show you that you have made a spelling mistake, which is really nice. Make sure you take some time after to proofread, fix any spelling, grammar, punctuation mistakes, and make sure that you've addressed all of the tasks that they ask you to do. And that should take 3, 4, 5 minutes at the end. So make sure you budget your time to leave that space at the end. Use a suitable tone. So don't be too formal or too informal, depending on the situation, right? So use a suitable tone for your email and for your survey answer. Vary your sentence structure and vocabulary. So don't always choose to use simple or complex sentences. You want to throw in some simple sentences, complex, compound sentences, and don't always repeat the same words. So that's a big no-no, repeating the same word over and over. Try to show off your vocabulary by using different words to describe things. All right, last part is the speaking test. It seems quite long, but each of these sections go by pretty quickly. I didn't mention this, but each section has a practice question at the beginning that is not marked. It's important that you do it because you're testing things like your microphone. And while you're doing your speaking test, it should show you that your microphone is working. Because if you get through the whole test and your microphone doesn't work, you're going to get 0 on your speaking test. So do the practice test. The practice task. The practice task is not marked, but it's a good idea to do it. Also to clear your throat. You want to actually do that practice task. So the 8 parts of the speaking test. 1 is giving advice. So what should somebody do in a certain situation? 2 is talking about something that happened to you. So talking about a personal experience. 3 is describing a scene. We have an example of this one coming up. Task 4 is to predict what's going to happen. Task 5, this one's tricky. Comparing and persuading. So you have to compare a couple options. Then you have to persuade somebody to go with the option that you chose. For example, I can choose between pizza and chicken. So I see a picture of pizza and chicken. Then I have to convince you to go for pizza with me. And I have to give you reasons why you should want pizza. All right, the next one is dealing with a difficult situation. So this one can be also pretty tricky. For example, you have to deal with a work situation where your boss is being a jerk and you have to tell them not to do that, but in a really nice, careful way. Task 7 is giving an opinion. And then task 8 is describing an unusual situation. This one's a weird one. You're going to get a picture of something not normal, like a weird piece of furniture or a strange scene. And you have to talk about what's happening in that, describing it to somebody so they can see what you see. All right, so it seems long, but each section is pretty short. It takes maybe 2 or 3 minutes for each of those sections. So this is the hard part of the test. You're not talking to a person like you would in an IELTS exam. You're speaking into a headset. So you have your microphone, you're just talking into a headset. That can be hard for some people. So if you're not used to that, kind of like what I'm doing now, I'm not talking to anybody, I can't see anybody, but I'm just talking. So this is a skill that you have to get used to before the exam. You will have a short time, 30 seconds or 60 seconds to prepare. And I encourage you to use that time to write a few notes about what you would like to talk about, because maybe while you're answering, you get off track, you forget about what you want to say. Having a piece of paper with a few notes on it can be really helpful. The screen will go automatically to the next section, so you don't have to click any buttons. A voice, you'll hear it in your headset, will say to start speaking. And as soon as they say that, go. You might only have 60 seconds or 2 minutes to answer, so start talking right away. You'll have a countdown bar showing you how much time is left. And you're marked on 4 things: your content and coherence, your vocabulary. Again, you want to show off a little bit that you have a good, solid vocabulary. Listenability. So how easy are you to listen to? Do you have a lot of pauses or ums or ahs or things like that? And then, did you fulfill that task that they asked you to complete? All right, here's an example. So this is task 3, describing a scene. And then for task 4, they'll use the same scene again. In this task, it asks you to describe some things that are happening in the picture below as well as you can. The person with whom you are speaking cannot see the picture. So look at this scene. Looks like it's in a coffee shop or a cafe. You only have 60 seconds to describe it. So really, you can't say everything that's happening. So you're going to want to focus on the main things, but you have to be descriptive. So you want to say how many people there are, where are they happy, what are they wearing, what kind of a cafe is it, what do the employees wear. So it's tricky, right? You have a short time and they're asking you to describe that scene in 60 seconds. I was talking to Wisdom a couple of weeks ago, and he said that some Nigerian people don't like to describe things in a lot of detail. So this is a skill that you have to know for this test, right? You have to just make up stuff and talk for 60 seconds. Talk right till the end. Even if you're going to get cut off at the end, that's okay. Keep talking right up until the end. You're not going to get punished for being cut off in the middle of a sentence. All right, so that's just one example of a speaking section. Again, look at the layout, right? Make sure you're familiar with the layout, where it shows you that the volume of what you're recording, how to go to the next section, although it will advance automatically. Yeah. And some tips, and then we're almost done. Read the instructions very carefully. So this applies to all parts of the test, but especially the speaking part. So it's sort of testing you not just on your speaking, but on your reading ability as well. Because if you don't understand the question, how can you do well on the speaking part? So read it carefully, maybe reread it a couple times. use that preparation time to think about and maybe write out what you're going to say. Look at the pictures and identify the relevant or important details. Make your choices quickly. This one's important when you're given one or two choices. Make it quickly and then use your time to think of reasons why you chose that one. Don't say, oh, could be this one, could be that one. You don't have time for that. Make a choice, stick with it, write down a few supporting ideas. Write notes, we talked about that. So use the paper you're given, write down a few notes, because once you're talking, you might forget what you're gonna say. And like I said, speak for the full time. Don't stop 10 minutes before the end. Push through right until the end. You're gonna get punished if you don't fulfill that whole time slot. A few more tips. Be descriptive. So lots of details, right? How are they feeling? How are they looking? What are they doing? Where are they going? What are they dressed like? How old are they? That type of thing. So those details are really important. Okay. Use precise transitions. Don't always use and or so. Those ones are favored by English speakers, but you need to use more. You need to use but, because, however, therefore, in addition, right? You're using more than just those two transition words. Correct your mistakes. Like I said, everybody makes mistakes. If you say the wrong word or you do a little slip up, correct it. You should correct your mistakes, but then move on, right? Don't spend a lot of time and say, oh, sorry, I said this 2 seconds ago when I meant to say this. I'm so embarrassed, right? Who cares? Correct it, say the right word, and move on. Use an appropriate tone. So for the speaking test, you want to imagine that you're talking with a friend on the phone, right? Don't use bad language, don't swear, don't use a lot of slang, but it's quite informal. Clear your throat. So this is a good chance during the practice task to cough if you need to clear your throat. And you're also checking that the mic is working. So that's really important. Use a variety of sentence structures, phrases, transitions, vocabulary, etc. So change it up. Don't always answer each question using exactly the same sentence structure. All right, so I know that's a lot of information. I did put this presentation in the chat. Refer to it. I'll put it again at the end of the session so you can download it if you missed it at the beginning. Those were specific tips to each part of the test. Now I'm just going to go through, I think there are 9 general things that you can do to prepare for the exam. Number 1 is to review Canadian spelling, words, phrases, and accents. This is a Canadian test with Canadian speakers using Canadian words and Canadian spelling. So probably not a lot of you are familiar with Canadian spelling. It's mostly like British spelling, but our vocabulary is sort of more Americanized. So instead of like lift, we say elevator. Instead of boot of a car, we say trunk, right? So the words we use are more American, but the spelling is British. Like, for example, color will spell C-O-L-O-U-R, and that will show up in this test because it is a Canadian test. Accents, probably they sound somewhat like me, but you might have a variety of accents from, other countries. So just be prepared for that and expose yourself to Canadian stuff, right? So maybe Canadian news broadcasts or Canadian TV shows or Canadian movies or stuff like that. Prepare by listening and reading a lot. So go back to what those topics were for each of the different parts of the test. Like there's one on news, right? You have to listen to something from the news, So that's a good way to prepare for this test, is to listen to news broadcasts and then answer questions about it. So what did I listen to? What's the main idea? What are some of the details? So asking yourself those types of questions are really important to prepare. Number 3, practice describing pictures. So you can find some pictures, practice talking about it. So you can record yourself. This is a great thing to do, is record yourself on your phone or your computer. Practice for like a full minute or 2 minutes even, and then record yourself and listen back to hear how you did. Maybe you want to play it for somebody else too. And often other people are able to pick up on things that you miss when you're talking about yourself. If you're like me, you probably don't like listening to yourself speak, but it's a good way to prepare for this exam. Number 4, practice typing. So it will be done on a computer. If you're not a great typer, then that's a skill that you really need to work on, because you don't have a lot of time on the writing section to type out 200 words. You might have 20 minutes to 30 minutes to write 200 words and correct it and things like that. So working on your computer skills and your typing skills can be really important. Practice writing emails and opinions as well. All right, there are a lot of free stuff that I'm going to show you in a second on the CELPIP website. So they have webinars, they have podcasts, they have study tip videos, there are guides, they have a YouTube channel as well, and they also have 2 totally free practice tests that you can do. And I really recommend that you at least do the practice tests. They have seminars as well. The webinars are free. You can sign up for a listening webinar or writing webinar. All of the skills will be covered, and they have those every 3 weeks or so. And they're free, which is really great. Understand the test format and how to control things. We sort of showed you a bit of that in today's presentation. The other one is more about you, right? So get a lot of rest, eat a good breakfast, bring water with you, show up early. You have to be there like 45 minutes before the test starts, or else they won't let you into the exam. So take care of yourself, get a lot of rest and sleep, because 3 hours is a long time to do a test. Consider taking some training. So if you think, this is a pretty important test. If it determines whether or not you're eligible to come to Canada, you may decide that you want to do some training. So you could get a tutor, you could sign up for some paid training course, but it might cost some money. But if it helps you get to Canada sooner, then maybe it is worth it. And you don't want to take this test multiple times, right? You don't want to take it once and then have to pay another. It's pretty expensive, 200 and something Canadian dollars. Maybe you want to pay a little bit upfront to do that training and help you get more familiar with the exam and work on some of your weak spots. And then finally, know your weaknesses and strengths. So if you feel like reading and listening are a good strength, maybe you want to spend a lot of your time on the other skills, like the speaking and writing part of the exam. So be honest with yourself, do some of the practice tests, and that will give you a good idea of where you want to devote your study time. Oh, last one. Oh, I said that twice. That's it pretty much for me. So that is our presentation. I will address the questions in a second. I just want to make sure that everybody knows what the CELPIP website looks like and where you can get all the information that you need about this exam. So this is the CELPIP website. It's just www.celpip.ca. It's telling you where the testing centers are. I would go here. So once you're prepared to do this exam, go through the overview section, what you can expect on test day. There's a frequently asked questions section. who accepts this test. And then the most important section, in my opinion, is here: prepare for the CELPIP. So they have a prep overview, they have a bunch of free resources, they have your webinars and workshops. There are some paid study materials that you could consider buying. Here are some prep programs, and even the blog is useful, right? Even with the blog, they have, this one's on tips, top 10 speaking tips. This is top 10 reading tips, right? So there is some useful stuff in the blog as well.
So you can follow up and catch up with things. I just displayed some of our contact information here if you want to follow up on if you want to follow us on social media, so that you'll be informed when these materials are ready for you. Okay, I would like to thank everyone that has attended this session today. And more importantly, I would like to thank Ian for taking out time from his very busy schedule to provide us with all the information that he provided us with today. Thank you, Ian, and thank you for all the support. Each time I run to you, you're always there providing support. Everyone on the group, I know they are saying thank you for all the information. You can reach us on phone at +1 902 8020512. Our email address is info@dowimmigration.com. And if you also want to visit our website, it is www.dowimmigration.com. You may also want to follow us on our social media, following us with our social media, on our social media handles, all displaying on your screen. And for Ian, he has shared his presentation, and I believe I did see his email address and his website on the first page of his presentation. Ian, again, Ian is the owner of Right Start Newcomer Services in Halifax. He has been teaching English as an additional language for over 20 years. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you when we have our next webinar. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.